Perhaps the most interesting aspect of the history of turmeric is that it has never been found in the wild. Like never, never ever. So how is that even possible? The Immaculate Plant Conception. Truth be told, historians believe that turmeric was actually created as a hybrid between Curcuma aromatica and another curcuma varietal. Turmeric has been in use since around, and possibly even before this, 3000 BC. Evidence supporting this includes 4,500-year-old pots from New Delhi, India, containing traces of turmeric root. But the Western world... it took a little bit longer to catch on, as it really didn't get popular in America until the 80s. Like the 1980s, AD. What the heck took us so long? We'll talk about that shortly. One of the really crazy and fun aspects of turmeric is just how many names it's had throughout history. It's perhaps the most named plant with various names, that is, throughout history. Crazy. We'll start it off with the word turmeric itself, which actually comes from the Latin terra merita, which basically means meritorious earth. From there, turmeric is called lots of different things depending on where and when you live. As you can see by this long list, these were all names for turmeric. In ancient Sanskrit alone, turmeric went by over 50 different names. Wait, how does Gauri mean all of that? That's just one translation of it, though Gauri is actually another name for the Hindu goddess Parvati. Also in Ayurveda, the ageless form of Indian medicine, turmeric has had over 100 different names. And one of turmeric's most famous names, Haridra, some translate it simply to mean yellow or the yellow one. But breaking it down, it actually refers to Hari, another name for the Hindu god Vishnu, and Dara, which means what one wears. So basically, it means the stuff that Vishnu likes to wear on his body. While it may seem a little bit weird to some, that's not as kooky as you may think, as the bindi dot worn by Hindus traditionally contains turmeric. While eventually, yes, we did realize turmeric is great for food, archaeological evidence supports it was used as a dye first. You know those famous yellow Buddhist monk robes? Well, they were traditionally dyed with turmeric. Depending on the pH levels applied in the dyeing process, turmeric also has the ability to dye materials in hues of orange and red too. Some anthropologists even believe that turmeric was used as a dye as far back as when agriculture was first invented. Knowing all this dye and name stuff now, it's probably no surprise that turmeric comes from Southern Asia, and most likely from India itself, which incidentally is the country that still makes and uses the most turmeric. Now somewhere around 3000 to 2500 BC, turmeric and its cousin ginger were taken out of Asia by the Austronesians, and they helped spread turmeric all over the big and briny sea. Before long, turmeric could even be found as far as Madagascar and even Hawaii. There's even evidence that it arrived in what is now Israel around 2600 to 2200 BC, though the first existing written account from the area comes from Egypt around 1500 BC, though there is recent research indicating turmeric was already making its way around the Mediterranean Sea by 1000 BC. And it's obvious that it didn't get moving very fast by land, as you don't see evidence of it in China until the famous Tang Materia Medica in 659 AD. And as spice trade routes expanded, you see it taking a foothold in East Africa around 800 AD and over to West Africa by 1200 AD. In fact, evidence shows turmeric made its way to the Abbey of Corbie in northern France by the end of the 10th century. And then turmeric progress apparently was just powered by turtles, because it didn't go very far very fast. Turmeric outside of Southern Asia didn't get used much until pretty much the 17th century. And this was for several reasons. First of all, similar to ginger, it's one of the only spices that grows by planting rhizomes, not seeds. And it requires higher temperatures, indirect but bright lighting, well-drained soil, and humid conditions, which, as growing goes, is not entirely easy. That's also because as a spice on its own, it's not all that flashy. And it's often just as a supporting player in dishes that it really shines. Hey, feel free to argue with me about this in the comments. That's just my opinion on it. Though the biggest problem turmeric faced was being overshadowed by its arch enemy, saffron. Oh yeah, saffron? Don't look so smug and superior. Turmeric is just as good as you. Can you believe this spice? Freaking saffron. This is all because while you may be familiar with those red saffron strands, as a powder, saffron looks pretty much exactly like turmeric. Spain, luckily, was one of the only European countries to embrace turmeric early on. But even they called it curcuma, which is actually a derivative of the Arabic word for saffron. All of this saffron comparison led turmeric to being called yellow saffron, Indian saffron, and probably the worst, poor man's saffron. Definitely not a good thing for building your own reputation when you're constantly being referred to by the name of another spice. Despite being humiliated for centuries, turmeric slowly started to claw and scrape its way into the hearts of the rest of the world. Being marketed as terra merita, or meritorious earth, did help its reputation a little bit, but what really helped it take off, oh my god, is because it was largely marketed as saffron from India. Can't get away from the saffron. Despite being entirely despotic, the British East India Trading Company's trade of Indian foods and goods did help increase the popularity of curry and concurrently turmeric. But this still took a lot of time, and it didn't start taking off in England until the 18th century, where you find it in Scottish botanist Elizabeth Blackwell's A Curious Herbal, and in 1747, where turmeric appeared in Hannah Glosse's The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy, in a recipe for a turmeric pickle, no less. A darker side of turmeric's history is that it went hand in hand with Indian slavery. Between 1838 and 1917, more than 500,000 Indians were transported to the Caribbean islands to fill the gap in plantation labor following the abolition of slavery. Slavery. Why, people? Why? We're still doing it, just in different forms. And one of the only good things to come out of this is that when the Indians were brought over as slaves, they brought turmeric with them. If you can call that a good thing. Turmeric popularity in the scientific world started to take off in the late 19th century, thanks to discoveries like turmeric paper, which is used to test alkalinity. Don't know what alkalinity is? Look it up. I don't have time to tell you everything. And then in 1815, two German scientists discovered turmeric's main active agent, curcumin. And a bit further down the line, the first paper investigating curcumin's medical properties appears in the Journal of Nature in 1949. And then turmeric really started taking off. No! How, people? How? Western medicine was still turning its nose up to turmeric in dramatic fashion.
Talk to the hand.
In 1931, Maud Greaves' famous A Modern Herbal only mentions turmeric as a mild aromatic stimulant seldom used in medicine except as a coloring. I think we all can agree she was a bit wrong about this. And it wasn't until the 1960s, when more studies were reporting turmeric is actually really good for you, that the Americans started going, yeah, maybe I'll try it, I think. And like I said, it wasn't until the 1980s that Americans really caught on to turmeric's greatness. Which brings us to the 2000s, where it finally took off to the point where in 2023, the United States ranked as the largest importer of turmeric in the world. If you want to learn more about turmeric or its cousin ginger, watch one of these videos right here. Please be kind, take care of each other, and screw saffron. Enjoy the power of turmeric. Probably a bit harsh after saying be kind and all that. Okay, saffron, you're pretty cool too. Just don't get too smug about it.